When my parents handed me a 30-day eviction notice at Sunday dinner so my older brother could move his new girlfriend into my childhood bedroom, they expected me to break down. They expected me to cry, to beg, maybe to scream about how unfair it all was. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have known, was that I had been keeping a massive, six-figure secret from them for over a decade. A secret that was about to turn their perfect little family arrangement completely upside down. You see, 10 years ago, my parents were drowning financially. The recession had hit them incredibly hard. My dad's independent contracting business went under overnight, and they were literally weeks away from the bank foreclosing on our family home. They were terrified, stressed out of their minds, and entirely too proud to ask anyone for help, especially their own children. I was 22 at the time, working as a junior financial analyst by day and picking up grueling bartending shifts by night. I had been saving absolutely every penny I made since I was 16, because I always intuitively knew I would never get the financial support or safety net my brother always seemed to receive. When I accidentally found the bright red foreclosure notices they had tried to bury at the bottom of the kitchen trash can, my heart dropped. I knew I had to do something. But I also knew their stubborn pride. If I simply handed them a massive check, they would refuse it outright, or worse, they would deeply resent me for it. So I took a different route. I hired a sharp real estate attorney. Through an LLC I created specifically for this purpose, I negotiated directly with the bank to buy their distressed debt. I essentially bought the physical land out from under the house. The bank then restructured their mortgage to cover just the physical dwelling, lowering their monthly payments to something they could easily afford on their reduced income. My parents cried absolute tears of joy when they got the mail, genuinely thinking the bank had granted them some miraculous one-in-a-million hardship program. They had absolutely no idea that their quiet, youngest daughter was now technically their new landlord. For 10 long years, I paid all the property taxes on the land. I moved into the dark, damp basement apartment, paying them what we called rent, which I then secretly funneled right back into fixing their broken water heater, replacing the aging roof, and keeping them comfortable in their retirement. I didn't want praise. I didn't want a medal. I just desperately wanted them to be safe, and I wanted to be a good daughter. Then, enter David, my older brother, the absolute golden child of the family. David is 32 years old, seemingly allergic to hard work, and entirely convinced he's just one business pitch away from becoming a millionaire. Over the years, my parents happily funded his failed tech startup, his disastrous food truck venture, and his 6-month backpacking trip across Europe to find himself. And now, David had found himself completely broke, moving back to our hometown with a 20-year-old girlfriend who was expecting a baby. Suddenly, the prodigal son was returning home. By the way, if you're listening to this and you have that one sibling who gets away with absolutely everything while you do all the heavy lifting, hit the subscribe button right now, because you know exactly how infuriating this situation is about to get. From the exact moment David walked back through the front door, the entire dynamic of the house shifted. He completely took over the living room, complained loudly about the groceries I bought with my own money, and treated me like I was the hired help. My parents just smiled blindly and said things like, "Family helps family. You need to be more understanding of his situation." I bit my tongue. I kept paying my rent. I kept quietly paying the massive property tax bills. I thought it was just a phase and that it would blow over. Then came the fateful Sunday dinner. My mom had spent all day cooking a massive roast. David was sitting at the table looking unusually smug, and I immediately felt sick to my stomach. After dessert, my dad cleared his throat. He looked at David, smiled warmly, and then turned to look at me with an expression completely devoid of warmth or empathy. "We've made a decision," my dad said, folding his hands. "David is starting a family now. He needs real stability. So, we are officially gifting him the house." I froze, my fork hovering in the air. Gifting him the house? What about me? My mom sighed, using that deeply patronizing voice she reserved just for me. "You're so independent. You've always been fine on your own, sweetheart. But we need you to vacate the basement by the end of the month so David can knock down the walls and remodel it into a nursery for the baby." I just stared at them. I had spent 10 years of my life, my entire life savings, my 20s, protecting the very roof over their heads, and they were casually throwing me out onto the street to reward the son who had done absolutely nothing but drain their bank accounts dry. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. In that exact moment, the love and validation I had been desperately trying to earn from them for my entire life just evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, absolute, razor-sharp clarity. I realized my love was entirely unrequited. I wasn't their daughter. I was just a convenient safety net. "Okay," I said quietly, wiping my mouth with a napkin. "If that's what you really want." 2 weeks later, we were all sitting in the incredibly stuffy conference room of their family lawyer. They had insisted I come along to sign a quitclaim deed, just to make absolutely sure I could never legally contest the transfer of the house to David in the future. David was literally leaning back in his expensive leather chair, smirking at me across the heavy mahogany table. The lawyer, an older, meticulous gentleman named Mr. Vance, adjusted his reading glasses and carefully looked over the transfer paperwork my parents had drafted. He frowned deeply. He shuffled the papers, looked closely at his computer screen, typed a few things, and frowned again. "Well," Mr. Vance said slowly, scratching his chin, "you can certainly transfer ownership of the physical structure to David. That is within your rights, but I see here you don't actually own the property it sits on." My dad laughed nervously, looking around the room. "What are you talking about, Bob? We've lived on that lot for over 30 years. Mr. Vance shook his head grimly. "According to the official county records, the land was purchased 10 years ago by a corporate entity called Oak Tree Holdings, LLC. You only own the dwelling itself. The land is on a specialized long-term ground lease, and you have absolutely no legal right to transfer the plot to your son." The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. David stopped smirking, his chair squeaking as he sat up straight. My parents looked at each other in total, unadulterated confusion. I slowly reached into my leather bag, pulled out a thick, heavy manila folder, and slid it right across the mahogany table until it rested in front of my father. "I am Oak Tree Holdings," I said. My voice didn't even tremble. My mom's face went completely white. All the color drained from her cheeks. "What? No. That's impossible. The bank, the hardship program they gave us." "There was no hardship program, Mom," I said, looking her dead in the eye, my voice perfectly steady. "You were going into foreclosure. You were going to lose everything. I bought the land to save you. I've been paying the property taxes out of my own pocket for 10 solid years. The rent I dutifully paid you every month, that went directly to fixing the roof you sleep under and the furnace that keeps you warm." The silence that followed was suffocating. It was heavy and thick with the realization of what they had done. My dad looked like he was physically going to be sick. David started stammering, looking frantically between the lawyer and our parents. Wait, so whose house is it? Who owns my house? I looked right at my older brother, giving him the exact same patronizing smile my mother had given me at dinner. Congratulations, David. The physical house is all yours, but the dirt it sits on is legally mine. And since the original ground lease with my parents is officially terminated as of today due to this attempted transfer of assets, we need to negotiate a brand new lease. I paused, letting the reality sink in. My new rate is $10,000 a month. If you can't pay it, you have exactly 30 days to move your physical house off my property. I stood up, grabbing my coat. My mom started crying hysterically, reaching out across the table to grab my arm.
Please, sweetheart, please. We didn't know. We had no idea what you did for us.
I gently but firmly pulled my arm out of her grasp. You didn't need to know about the money, Mom, I told her softly. You just needed to love me as much as you loved him. And you didn't. In the weeks that followed, my phone blew up constantly. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had very strong opinions about family loyalty and forgiveness. My aunt left a screaming voicemail calling me a monster for making my parents cry. But the funny thing was, not a single one of them offered to take my parents in, and certainly none of them offered to pay David's new $10,000 rent. It is amazing how quickly people's moral high ground crumbles when it costs them actual money. My parents ultimately had to rescind the transfer. They begged me to let them stay on the old terms, but the trust was entirely broken. I eventually offered to buy the physical house from them at a massive discount, giving them enough cash to downsize to a small condo across town, far away from my property. As for David, his girlfriend left him when she realized he didn't actually own a sprawling estate, and he is currently sleeping on our aunt's couch. The same aunt who called me a monster. It wasn't the ending I ever wanted for my family. I had wanted to keep that secret forever. But walking out of that situation for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely and utterly free. If you think I went too far, or if you think they got exactly what they deserved after years of taking advantage of me, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And remember to drop a like and subscribe for more stories where karma always gets the very last word.